Here's my quick summary video for my 2008 Escalade upper and lower ball joints. So, I'll just jam it in there for posterity's sake. So there's the old upper control arm. Now it's held in there with bushings, and they look like this. Now the head is on the inside. So on my car, when I went to take the nuts off, they snapped. I ended up having to torch out the entire bushing before I could get enough heat on it for the air hammer to do its job. You do not need to move the spring. As you'll notice, these are slotted right here. So just wiggle it around once you get it loose, and you'll have yourself enough room to get it out. To replace the upper ball joints, you have to replace the whole control arm. I found that my upper ball joint had some play in it, as well as my old lower. Now, these uppers, I believe, are 19s or 21s. To get to this point, you'll have to take the axle nut off. I believe that's 34. It's pretty much your standard GM axle nut. You'll need to take off this nut right here, which I believe is an 18. You'll need to take off the old nut, which is, I believe, a 19 or a 21. And then you'll need to take off your nut from your outer tie rod end, which I believe is an 18. You want to tap the spindle where this connects with a hammer, and normally this will pop right out. The upper, I tapped the top spindle and that came out. The lower, I did have to use a pickle fork on that. So essentially, once you get the nut off, you're jamming a pickle fork in like that with the spindle, hitting it until it pops off. Move your caliper, your ride height sensor, all that stuff out of the way. If you have to torch yours out like I did, you'll want to take this ride height sensor off because it mounts to the control arm. And if you don't, you'll end up torching it like I did and needing to buy a new ride height sensor. Once you get those bolts torched out and air hammered through, you will be able to remove this, and then you can put your new one in. In my case, I had to get new bolts. Went to rockauto.com, got 4 new bolts for 20 bucks. Now it comes time for the lower ball joint. So your factory one looks like this. Now it's actually kind of mushroomed out. You can't really tell because I ground it off. Let me get this set up here. So it's hard to tell, but in 4 spots it is mushroomed out over the edge of your lower control arm. For me, I saw another gentleman used a hammer and chisel. I actually took my grinder, just went around it like that, got it all cut off. As you can see, no damage to my control arm. And then it came time to press it. I have a kind of crappy ball joint press and did not want to ruin my control arm. So I went to the auto parts store and I rented a really nice kit, and it had everything I needed to do it correctly. So essentially, let me just see how I did it here. Essentially, I had that piece on the top of the ball like that, and here, I'll see if I can lay it down. There we go. Essentially, it was just like that to get it out. So selected the proper size cup, not an oversized one. My cheap kit had one slightly bigger than this, and it would not work. I had to go rent this one. Use that like that, and once I got it halfway out, I then stuck that little extender piece in the top to finish pushing it out the rest of the way. Now for install of the new one, essentially I used this slightly smaller cup that sat like that, nice and tight on that ridge. I used the bigger piece for the bottom. I used a spacer to allow enough room for it to be pressed fully. And then my top piece. With the proper ball joint press, they went in and out easy as pie. So I'm on the reassembly stage now. I bought AC Delco professional grade lowers. So these are pressed in. Instead of having a snap ring, they have this nifty lock ring, and then they're greasable as well. So I'll go ahead and get these on both sides seated all the way down. The upper control arm just goes right in the hole. Make sure you put it in the same way. You're going to need an alignment after this anyways, so try and get it close-ish to where it was, but you'll need an alignment, so just get it close enough to drive to an alignment shop. Alright, hope this helps somebody.